Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being here today. Some people are still arriving, but while we're waiting, I wanted to go over some organizational information. So, our webinar will last about 1 hour and it is being recorded. So, don't worry, we'll make the recording available tomorrow. And you will receive an email in your inbox notifying you that the video is already available, and then you can watch it again. Okay. And I wanted to remind you that we have the chat on the right side of your screen where you can ask questions. And in the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session to answer all your questions. And so if you're enjoying this video, please like it and leave a comment below the video so that more people can see it, right? So let me present myself. My name is Maria Marquez. I'm responsible for marketing in Hypoditer. And for those of you who don't know us yet, Hypoditer is the influencer marketing platform that helps brands and agencies to find quality creators and manage campaigns with minimal effort. But we also love to host educational webinars and produce great content. So just stay in touch and please monitor our emails in your email box so that you don't lose anything important. Okay, so let's start. Today we're here to talk about influencer metrics that can lead you to a wrong decision, making you choose an influencer that won't bring the results that you expected. And the best place to start is understanding what ingredients make up a successful influencer campaign. I'll just show you this slide. So there are 3 key ingredients that determine whether you will see results from your campaign or not. And you have full control over 2 of these ingredients. So the first one is your offer, your product or service, and how it is presented on your website or on your social media channels, for example. This means that even the most committed, most wonderful influencer who creates fantastic posts that receive amazing engagement, well, he won't be able to do anything for you if your website has a poor user experience. For example, if your Instagram account is empty or lacks interesting content, the same thing will happen. So the influencer is just a means to reach your audience. But you need to show that what you're offering is of quality, your company is trustworthy, and that you care about your customers. So this is very important. And the second ingredient that you can control to a certain extent is the influencer's deliveries, the things that your influencer can produce. And here you can negotiate with the influencer, provide information about the company's values, the campaign's content, the key points that need to be highlighted, for example, some keywords that he must mention. And you can also approve or disapprove of the content before publication. And the third ingredient that is crucial but very difficult to control is the audience that will see and interact with the influencer's content. But it really is the key piece, because depending on who sees the content, the results of your campaign can be incredible or super negative. So the influencer that you've chosen may be wonderful. They may create fantastic content, have an authentic audience, good organic engagement. But if you sell, for example, children's clothing, and your influencer's audience is only interested in partying, there won't be a match, there won't be any engagement, there won't be a conversion, right? So that's not what we're aiming at. And in other words, knowing your brand and its target audience, you need to do your homework and research influencers with relevant audiences. And this way you can reduce the risk of spending your budget on random campaigns that don't reach your real customers, right? So how can you achieve it? So for this, you need to have in hand the image of your ideal customer. And here we recommend going a bit further than a generalized image in the style of, they are women aged 30, 45 from the middle class. To have this more profound vision, you need to answer a few more questions, like where does this woman live? Like north of Indonesia or the city of Jakarta or even a specific part of Jakarta, right? So what are the interests of this woman? What does she want? How does she spend her free time? All these things. So for example, let's say you can manufacture organic foods and your audience is women aged 30, 45 from the upper middle class. And you may notice, for example, that these women, because they care about their health and think about the future, they also aim to achieve financial stability in the future and want to learn to invest and manage their finances better. And in this case, you can brainstorm and you can create a campaign with a personal finance influencer who can recommend your products as a great investment. So if you've already done some influencer campaigns in the past, it's a gold mine of information about your target audience because you can analyze the results of these past campaigns and have some conclusions. And if not, if it's your first campaign, well, do this. Just describe this persona of your buyer, understand who he is, and then just try it with the first campaign. Okay. So let's start with the metrics. And bad news is that there is something known as vanity metrics. And if you've been swayed by an influencer who presented a great, beautiful media kit with fantastic numbers, and you thought, wow, look at all this reach, look at how many followers this influencer has. We want to remind you that these are vanity metrics, which have very little impact on the results of your campaign. So you need to focus on performance metrics that show the real power of an influencer, the real power to influence, right? So today we're going to show that performance metrics are the ones that make a difference, and vanity metrics don't make any difference. And I'll go further. Sometimes they hinder because they end up clouding a vision. And often influencers, they take advantage of vanity metrics to charge more. So you need to really be careful with these ones. So today we're gonna see these metrics that hinder and metrics that help. So for every metric that hinders, we'll suggest 2 or 3 metrics that you can take into account instead of the vanity metrics. Okay, so let's start here. So the first vanity metric is total follower count. The number of followers, it doesn't help at all. This metric can hinder because, as I mentioned before, the influencer may say, look, I have 5 million followers and I want $1,000 for a post and a story. And this metric doesn't let you understand if this investment will be worthwhile or not. So, for example, if an influencer accumulated all these followers like 3 years ago while he was participating in a reality show and hasn't done anything interesting since then, and the followers are no longer following his life, so this is not what you need, right? The number of followers, it doesn't show if the audience is authentic, if the followers are recent. It doesn't show anything like this. It's just a number. So you could invest $1,000, see your post gets published and get 0 engagement and 0 results. Yeah, of course, you can say that you gained reach. That's right. But without information about the relevance of this audience, this reach isn't very relevant. And this brings us to the first metric that is really worth keeping track of. It's the percentage of the audience relevant to your brand, authentic and active and aligned with your brand's persona. It should be in the appropriate age range, located in the regions where you can deliver your products. It should earn enough to purchase your product, all these things. Another point you need to consider is what percentage of users follow thousands of other accounts. So they do mass following, right? Because these people, they are unlikely to see your post. Their feed is flooded with posts from other creators, and it's very difficult to get any action from them. And by analyzing the influencer's audience from this angle, you'll see that the portion of their audience that interests you is much smaller than the total number of followers. And with this information in hand, you can make an informed decision about investing $1,000 in this campaign. And here I can give you a pro tip, because when choosing an influencer, check how many other influencers are following his account. Because this way you can spread the word further, gaining additional exposition. If, for example, any of these influencer followers like your product and decide to tell about this product in his account, so you get this additional exposition free, or through a great influencer who can contact you and offer great conditions, right? Okay, second metrics that's worth measuring. The second truly important metric is growth rate over time. So compared to the total number of followers, this is a dynamic metric that allows you to see if the influencer remains relevant to the audience, if he can attract new followers, create high engagement content, or these metrics can also show you if the influencer accumulated his audience like 3 years ago and he's still trying to make a living from it. And of course, there may be strategic reasons to campaign with an influencer, even though you see that his audience is not growing. But in general, you want to invest in influencers who are growing. And the higher this growth rate, the better. So, for example, if you find an influencer, even if he's small, but who is growing like 50% week over week and has a significant percentage of your target audience among their followers, it's like a gold mine. So certainly go for this influencer, right? So once again, total follower count is not working. It's a vanity metrics, but the size of authentic audience and the account growth rate are the metrics that you should really focus on. Okay, so here we come to the second metrics that doesn't help at all. It's the engagement rate. It's beloved by many, but actually it can hinder, it can cloud your vision, because with the number of followers here, context is lacking. And this metric, it doesn't allow you to understand if it's authentic engagement, if it's just likes without comments, if they are real followers who are liking and commenting, or if the influencer is part of a group of influencers who agreed to like each other's posts, It also doesn't show if the engagement, if it's the engagement of organic posts or what is actually the engagement of paid posts, because in your case, you'll be working with paid posts. So it's worth investigating the numbers for this type of posts, right? And this is actually the first metric in this section that I recommend measuring, the engagement rate of sponsored posts. It is really important because it shows the results that the influencer can bring to brands that work with them and pay for these sponsored posts. Because if you look at this number and you see that an influencer has great engagement rates for organic posts, but the results of sponsored posts are not that great, then it means that when an influencer publishes a sponsored post, the audience easily perceives that it's an ad and interacts differently. Because if the engagement rates for the organic and sponsored posts are similar, then it's a signal, it's a good indicator, because it shows that the influencer is making sponsored posts that look like organic content and his audience accepts it, doesn't think that something is amiss. And if you see that the engagement rate for sponsored posts is higher than the engagement rate for organic posts, it's usually an indicator of suspicious activity, because actually it's unlikely for a user to prefer ads over organic content. So you should investigate it. And here I recommend using tools that can understand if it's fake engagement, because some influencers may want to do this to attract more brands to do business with them. And another thing that you can analyze here is to try to understand with how many brands the influencer partners. Because when an influencer starts doing too many partnerships, the engagement drops and the audience growth drops too, because that's not what people wanted to see in their account, right? So it's important to understand if your sponsored post will be the 5th sponsored post of the day or of the month. It's a completely different story, right? Okay, and another metrics that I recommend measuring here is relative engagement rate. So it's important to benchmark against the market, or for example, understand what is the medium engagement rate in your sector, in your niche. And this way you can understand if the engagement rate that your influencer is showing is good or bad. Like, for example, if I tell you that an influencer's engagement rate is 1.7, sounds good, right? Or not? So if the industry average if the industry average is like 4%, for example, then 1.7 is quite low, right? So you really need these benchmarks. And to get them, you can look at industry reports. For example, Hypoditor always shares this industry data. And actually, we've launched a report for Indonesia, and I'll share the link in the chat right now so that you can check it out. Let me post it. Okay, it's in the chat on your right. And you can use tools like Hypoditor that allow you to compare an influencer's engagement with the industry average and see what the engagement is like with influencers with a similar number of followers that are operating in the same sector. Okay? So this allows you to understand if an influencer is charging a fair price or trying to earn more by presenting worse results than other similar influencers. And actually, it's a great argument to negotiate the price. Like, hey, we do want to work with you, but your engagement is a bit below average. So can we do something about the price? And one more metrics I wanted to share here, brand safety metrics. So another point that's very important is the content that the influencer creates to attract engagement. Because some influencers, they want to generate bigger engagement and they post something controversial or something questionable, such as political or even racial comments. And this can harm the brand's image. Like, notice how brands make the point to cancel partnerships with any influencer involved in a scandal. For example, I think you remember the case of Kanye West, who lost his contract with Adidas after making anti-Semitic comments. Practically every day there are news on the internet about this or that influencer making some harmful comment. And, the internet doesn't forgive. And your brand doesn't want to be associated with an influencer who, for example, mocked the idea of parking spaces for autistic people, for example. So if you're sure that your influencer is producing quality content without speaking badly of anyone, without causing controversy, that's worth gold. And it's much more important than the high engagement rate that an influencer achieved with opinion posts about politics, for example. Right? So once again, engagement rate is not the metric that will really show you the influencer's performance. Better focused on sponsored posts engagement rate, relative engagement rate, and brand safety metrics, right? And one more metrics that doesn't really matter and doesn't help is demographics of the influencer. And in general, for you as a brand, data about where the influencer lives, the age of this influencer, whether he is male or female, this information is not very interesting. And of course, there are cases when, for example, you're running a campaign in a specific region and want the post to be made, for example, at a specific location in a specific city. And in this case, maybe it makes more sense to choose an influencer from there instead of paying for travel and accommodation for an influencer who lives in another part of the country, right? But generally, your focus is on the audience of influencers who will buy your product. So instead of analyzing the influencer's demographic data, analyze the demographic data of their audience, because it's the audience who's going to buy your product, right? So this is the metric that we recommend analyzing. And let's just see it from this point. For example, when you run paid ads and retargeting, your ads sometimes appear on random sites, but that's totally okay, because the important thing is the audience that accesses these sites and sees your ads, right? And it works the same way here. So don't worry so much about age, gender, and other demographic data of the influencer. By the way, it's a common mistake, so here's the tip. Focus on audience data. This can give you a very strong competitive advantage. And one more metrics that is worth analyzing, mentions from other brands, because this helps to better understand if this influencer is the perfect choice or not. Because you know your consumer, you know what else they buy. And often it's like this, that the user who buys such and such brand also buys your brand. So seeing an influencer promoting that brand is a great sign of audience relevance. Okay, so just to recap, demographics of the influencer can cloud your vision. It's the audience demographics that you should focus on. And other brand mentions can also bring some valuable insights. And just to recap, here are all the metrics that we've seen today. You can see that the metrics that help and that make a difference when choosing your influencer are those that bring more context, that speak more about how the audience interacts with the influencer account and who the audience is. And here you can ask me how to measure these metrics. Well, let's think together. Such metrics as audience demographics and other brand mentions you can find in the influencer's accounts or his media kits. And same goes for recent growth rates. Some influencers that are proud of their results include this graph in their media kits, but others don't. So it's a metric that sometimes is hard to get. Just as they usually only include data on total follower count instead of authentic audience count. And as well, they also put engagement rate instead of sponsored posts engagement rate. So ideally, you can merge this data from media kits and data from influencer analytical tools like Hypoditor, for example, because here you can find the whole scope of all the most important metrics. And if you want to see how Hypoditor gets the metrics that you need for your specific case, you can register for a personalized demo. I'll share a link now in the chat that you can use to choose the best time and date for this and get to know it better. But now I'll just show you briefly how this works. So this is a report from an influencer, and you can see here the first thing that you see is her AKS, and it's the audience quality score. So it's the score that shows if the audience is authentic, and so here you can see that it's good, that it has the tag good, and it's in green. So this influencer can be trusted. And here you can see a little more about the audience type. So 57% of real people. It's amazing. It's a good result. And what is important, that 5% of her audience are influencers. So remember, I told you to check this metric, because it can see that 5% of people that are following her can see your post, can see your product, can like it, and use it, try it, and mention it in their accounts. So mass followers are the people who follow lots and lots of other accounts, and they're not very relevant to you. And suspicious accounts, this is also not very relevant to you. So these are the factors that make the total follower count smaller, because you only need the authentic audience. You don't need to pay for suspicious account for mass followers. And here some more information about estimated reach and about estimated impressions. And you can use this information to to plan your campaign. And here's some information about brand affinity, and you can use it to understand better the audience and see if in your customer's profile you can see that people that buy your brand can also watch Netflix and read Vogue, for example. And here we have some notable followers. This again talking about influencers who are following this influencer, and on whose audience you can also potentially count if they notice your product and will want to share it in their social media. It also gives you an idea of other options of other influencers that you can contact for your campaign. And here we can see the growth patterns, like how the follower count was growing with time. You can see that it's totally organic, very nice. And here, some information about engagement, comparing her engagement rate with the other accounts from the same niche. And here, brand safety analysis that shows that her content is totally free of any harmful issues. And we even have the sentiment analysis here of comments that the posts receive. So you need an influencer who has a positive sentiments, because you need an influencer who creates this positive vibe with his audience. And brand mentions, this shows what were the other collaborations that the influencer had, and the engagement rate shows how well they went. So you see that there are some brands that had better performance on her account than other. And you can see if you have affinity with these brands, because it shows that the audience liked this these campaigns. And you can also click and see what exactly was this campaign, this mention, and have some insights on what works for this audience and what doesn't. Okay. So one important thing I want to tell you, that when you analyze this metrics, you will totally think, what is the what is the metrics that I should rely on? What is the most relevant metrics for my specific campaign? Because no two campaigns are alike, and one thing that you always need to consider is the aim of your campaign, because depending on whether the goal is sales or visibility or creating brand loyalty, you will choose different metrics and different influencers. Because, for example, for visibility campaigns, audience growth rate and authenticity, they are crucial. But for example, for sales, the most important thing is to find an influencer with the highest percentage of an audience that is super relevant to your product. So what is the key to understanding which metrics are the most important for your specific campaign? Well, once again, I get back to this point. The key is knowing and understanding your customer. And as well, one more important point, it's finding the influencer who has the most relevant audience. And this is the baseline. Okay, guys, this is actually all that I wanted to share with you today. And thank you for listening. Now it's time for your questions. So please send me your questions in the chat here on your right. And while I'm waiting for your questions, I just wanted to let you know that we are trying to make this regular webinars for Indonesian market. So just check your mailbox, because you'll receive all the notifications about our content and our webinars and all the relevant activities that we are doing on the Indonesian market in your email. Okay, seems that everything is clear. And thank you so much for being here today. Hope you enjoyed the content and it was useful. Please like this video on YouTube and leave a comment so that more people could see this video. Okay, we'll see each other really soon and have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.